No, oh, that may be because I'm muted. Hello. Hello, Cheryl. I can't actually hear you, but I can see you, so you could smile and wave. Uh, Now this is interesting. I don't know why I'm seeing you. Cheryl, could you give me a thumbs up if you can see the title sheet for the PowerPoint presentation? That is what you're seeing. Okay, good. It's interesting because, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. All right, well, according to my computer, it's 11 o'clock, and I think we should get started. I'm going to switch back here so I can read this a little better. Let me welcome everybody and start out with just a tiny bit of housekeeping. Just to let you know, this webinar, this presentation, is being given in conjunction with the Simi Valley Chamber of Commerce. In fact, if you hang on a second here, what I would like to do is turn this off for just a second and say, hello, everybody. Today's event is somewhat of an experiment. We're using Hangouts on Air. We're hoping that this works out fairly well. One of the problems with it is it means that I can't use the PowerPoint presentation mode, so you'll notice that you're looking at the slides as if you were editing them yourself. So without further ado, let's get into it. I've got a lot to cover, and let me share that screen with you again. Okay. The name of this presentation is The Crowd, the Cloud, and Working Out Loud. And I came up with that title somewhat as a little bit of a, not exactly a joke, but I like the rhyme, and it did cover some of the major elements that have to do with the type of business transition that I want to talk about today. And the subtitle here comes in part from the work of a friend of mine by the name of John Husband, and transitioning from hierarchy to hierarchy, and I will get into what he means and what I mean by, and hopefully we both mean the same thing, by hierarchy as we move along. So let me introduce myself. My name is Rick Ladd. I worked at Rocketdyne when it was owned by Rockwell International, by Boeing, and by the Pratt & Whitney division of United Technologies for over 2 decades. I was a webmaster for the high-pressure fuel team. I introduced knowledge management to the SSME program and managed that program. And I also introduced what I believe was one of the first social media tools in certainly in aerospace in 2002. And I was the lead to the team that did that. Well, about 4 years ago, I retired from Rocketdyne, and I started a business called Rick Ladd and Associates. I offered my services for small businesses, helping them use social media, and I also spent about approximately a year doing Facebook Fridays here at the Chamber, which started out as presentations and ended up being some very interesting Q&A sessions. People had a lot of questions. You can see below, and by the way, this presentation is being recorded and will be on YouTube. If anybody wants any of the information here, including the slide deck, I'm also going to put it on SlideShare, and I'll be more than happy to send it to you. You can contact me at rickladd@gmail.com. And here you can see a few of the things that I'm involved in, including the Rotary Club of Simi Sunrise. And I have just recently joined the board of directors for the Simi Valley Community Foundation. So The overarching idea behind this presentation is that there is a major shift happening in the way, not just that we do business, but really in the way we live our lives, which obviously is very much intertwined with business because we're always purchasing things, and most of us know that the way we do that has changed somewhat dramatically. And there are relationships here that are taking place between businesses uh, and the people that work there, between the businesses and their supply chain, and also with their customers. And we're going to get into that, and that is sort of what the envelope around which wraps around what we're going to talk about. So I mentioned moving from hierarchy to hierarchy. John gives his definition that you can see there: a dynamic two-way flow of power and authority based on knowledge, trust, credibility, and a focus on results enabled by interconnected people and technology. I would argue that it's a multi-way flow, and I think that is made pretty clear in the graphic here. I don't know how clearly you can see the depiction of the hierarchy over on the left, but it's a typical sort of like an org chart you've seen. It's somewhat not exactly clean boxes and all, but the idea is that you start out with one person at the top and it moves its way all through levels and levels of authority and responsibility. Whereas on the right, you see depicted really is a network, and in a true hierarchy, that network is never static, and it's not defined by specific roles and responsibilities as it is in a normal hierarchy. So that should be a theme that sits behind all of this as well. So the title, The Crowd, three specific concepts that I'm going to get into. And before I do that, I want to say a word about thinking and how I think you need to think about these things. I was fortunate to spend some time with one of the world's most recognized authorities on systems thinking, Professor Russell Ackoff, who used to come to Rocketdyne and share his time with us. And I've also spent a little time with him back before he died shortly after in the year of his 90th birthday. Back at the University of Pennsylvania, I'd been back there a couple of times and spent time with him. And one of the things I learned is that and please don't be put off by these two words, reductionism and synthesis, as sort of academic as they may sound. Essentially, what reductionism is what we would think of as analytical thinking. We in the West, at least, reduce systems to their constituent parts, and we tend to sort of break them apart and look at the different parts, thinking that that's the best way to understand how they work. But in fact, if you use systems thinking, you recognize that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that it isn't until you see how things work together that you really can understand what they are and how they work together. So Russell used to say, analysis of a system reveals how it works, but synthetic thinking is required to explain why it works the way it does, and systems thinking integrates the two. And many years ago, when Carl Sagan did the original Cosmos, he said in it, at least in the book, I don't recall if it was in the TV series, he said, if you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. And that was his way of pointing out the interconnectedness of all things. So I just want you to keep that in mind. This represents how you might look at these things analytically, and the smaller circles are supporting systems. You'll notice there's a little bit of overlap and a little bit of transparency, but how I really want you to see it is like this, which shows that all of these things are interrelated and have different types of relationships. And understanding any system requires also understanding how it fits into larger systems and how smaller systems fit into it. And some quick illustrations. Most organizations, if you've ever worked in a large organization, you'll find that they have either what they call functions or processes, and they're generally broken up like I have here: engineering, marketing, finance, manufacturing, sales, and there are others, legal, what have you. They usually don't talk to each other, and sometimes they actually fight each other for dominance or for scarce resources and things like that. When I worked at Rocketdyne, we got very much into continuous process improvement and found out very quickly that improving an upstream process was worse than staying the way you were before, because it caused an awful lot of problems when there was a bottleneck downstream of that process. And it also created some penny wise and pound foolish things. When we got a new president, one of the things he did was he mandated that the manufacturing operation record books, the MORE books, that were used to assemble our rocket engines, and sometimes consisted of literally thousands of pages. He wanted them printed on cheaper paper. So in doing so, it found out fairly quickly that the paper would rip, and the last thing he wanted was a page falling out and not knowing exactly where to replace it. So we ended up paying very expensive engineers to sit around and lick and glue hole reinforcers on the pages. It was a little bit of a debacle. So let's get into what I mean by the crowd. There are actually three things I'm going to talk about. One of them is the one that I believe truly belongs in this grouping. So in 2005, a man by the name James Surowiecki wrote the book Wisdom of Crowds. And one of the seminal ideas in the book was a story about Francis Galton, who noticed at a market event where an ox was being sold to be butchered, if you took the aggregate of the guesses of everybody out in the crowd there, of the weight of the ox, it generally was more accurate than that of any of the experts whose job it was to guess. They didn't have a weigh at the time. This was quite some time ago. And so one of the ways in which the crowd has become important is this concept of crowdsourcing, which really has existed for quite some time. The earliest example I know of is the Longitude Prize, which the government of England at the time, 1714, offered a prize for somebody who could come up with a method of determining longitude when a ship was out at sea and was out of sight of land. And it wasn't until 1785 that prize was awarded. And it was considerable. It was, in today's dollars, it was quite a bit of money. Some examples of crowdsourcing should be familiar with Wikipedia and perhaps the Khan Academy now. Procter & Gamble and Unilever have used it quite a bit to come up with new products. And then there's a couple more here. User Farm. Waze is an application you can put on your phone that will help you navigate if you drive a lot, and it uses the information that people put into the system either proactively or automatically as they're driving around. Crowdsourcing is another way in which the crowd has been used. And excuse me, I meant to take one of these out. Oops. So let's just go to the definition here. It's the process of obtaining needed services, ideas, or content by soliciting contributions from a large group of people. And this has been used especially online. Crowdfunding is the other process that I wanted to mention. And that is the practice of funding a project or venture by raising these small amounts of money from a large number of people. And if you were to Google uh, crowdfunding projects, you would find that there are quite a few projects that have raised upwards of $100,000, $200,000. Uh, and there are a lot of small ones, a lot of ways in which you can do that, that go all the way from really attempting to start a business to just doing something for a friend, and that it's only the people that you know that get that are informed of it and uh, uh, that have a way to fund you, and it's a rather interesting development that's been going on for a few years now. So the other way in which I mean the crowd is the concept of social business. And there are two meanings here. Uh, there's Muhammad Yunus's meaning, which is still being used, which is somewhat similar to like B corporations. It's non-loss generating, non-dividend microloans, things like that. It's not profit making, and it doesn't pay, it doesn't pay dividends or anything. I am more interested in what we're going to talk about is IBM's technology enhanced knowledge management and collaborative organizations. So the nuts and bolts of how social works, or what not to do as well. One of the things that you cannot do if you want to have a social organization is you cannot hold it to traditional standards, such as, at least not the traditional form of ROI. And I've put here a very rather complicated formula for calculating ROI, but in reality it's very, very simple. It's merely the cost of the income from an activity, or the income from the sale of a product, minus what it took to get to that sale, expenses, over what it took to get there. So if you sell something for $1, it costs you 50 cents to get it up to market, and I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. You've got a 50-cent net profit over the 50-cent cost, and you've got a 100% ROI. But really, you can't use that, in my opinion. You cannot use, and this is really is a subject that books have been written on. The thing is that you cannot measure it in such simple terms. And one of the analogies that I draw to that is, how do you calculate ROI on spending quality time with your children? You just can't do that. Nobody I know does that. You don't calculate how much taxes you've paid if your kids are going to public school. You don't calculate what it's going to cost to send them to college, and then you don't look to see how they're going to pay you back. You just do it because it's good. It's the right thing to do. And again, it's about seeing systems and not parts. And traditional ROI just kind of looks at some very simple parts. Another important aspect is that if you judge it, and if you only set it up so that it tries to meet these normal goals of efficiency, productivity, and cost reduction, you're also not going to really appreciate the value. And I think one of the ways that this really makes sense is this pyramid here comes from what Russell Ackoff called the spectrum of learning. And you'll see it goes from the very simple data up to the very somewhat complex wisdom. Both he and Peter Drucker referred to the first three, data, information, as knowledge, as the components of doing things right. But understanding why you're doing it and having the wisdom to know when and if you ought to be doing it, they call doing the right thing. And I believe this is really the way you have to look at things if you're going to implement, if you're going to use social as an organizational principle for your business. Whether you be even a sole proprietor can use this, because you still have to work with your customers, and you have to work with the people that you depend on to either supply you or to learn from, or whatever that might be. Nobody is an island. It also will not be successful if all you do is take a collaborative piece of software, let's say, and you slap it on your traditional hierarchical organizations, and which, if you've ever been in a large organization, this graphic depicts how a lot of people look at it, and I'm not going to go into that in depth. It also can't be used to mask an organization that is not paying attention to how you are interconnected with your supply chain and with your customers, which I have mentioned several times before. And this is an extremely important point, that you really you're no longer as if you ever were. I'm not sure that was ever truly the case, but certainly it's the way we conducted ourselves. We're no longer in a position where we can afford to ignore what our customers want and how they expect to do business with us. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a slide or two, I believe. Here it is. So my point here is the acronym CEM stands for Customer Experience Management. It really goes a little beyond customer relationship management, which is something that's fairly new. CEM is even newer in my experience. And the point I'm making here is that social is what provides for CEM to work. And both in terms of organizational change and in terms of the future of how you're going to work with everybody that you do business with. I don't know if you can make out this little Mobius strip at the bottom left. This was from Oracle, but it shows the cycle, the journey of a customer from when they first need something and they determine they have a need for something, all the way through researching, selecting, purchasing, getting delivery of, using it, maintaining it, keeping it going, and then finally, hopefully, recommending it for others, and then that's part of the cycle there. And the idea of customer experience management is to really be involved in understanding how your customers interface with your product at every level of their experience with it, and how you can help them out. And if you've read the book, or I don't know if you've heard of the book, I was fortunate enough to be able to do the proofreading for it, called The Age of Context. The authors talk about and give actually literally about 100 examples of organizations that are developing apps and developing concepts that somewhat anticipate the needs of their users based on their location, based on sensors in their phone that tell them what they're doing or how they're doing it, and based on their history, which brings up some privacy issues that we're definitely not going to get into, but that might be another webinar later on. So let's talk about the cloud. The cloud is one of those concepts that's kind of become a buzzword, similar to big data, that people use but don't quite understand. And so I thought I'd point out some things about the cloud so you can understand it. I was having a hard time sort of breaking it down because there's quite a bit to know about it, and from what I can tell. And I saw it this way. I thought, first of all, there are these three flavors of the cloud. There's the private cloud and the public cloud, and a hybrid is really just sort of a mixture of the two. And I have some slides that I hope will explain that a little bit more clearly. Also, you've got the computing stack, which cloud services that are offered, ranging from infrastructure as a service up through platform as a service and ultimately software as a service. And again, allow me to explain that a little bit. I hope this sort of, that you'll see at the bottom right, there's sort of a key. and I said that the things that are in the lighter, the very, very light orange color are you managed. The things that are managed by you or your organization, and the ones at the far left in the private cloud that's if everything, if all your hardware and all your software is on your premises, you're responsible for it, you have to hire the personnel to do everything. You have your own IT department, all the way from soup to nuts, from your servers and storage, the networking capabilities through the operating system, all the way up to maintaining your data and your applications. And as you move all the way over to the right, you see that public flavor, and that's where everything, when you are now using software as a service, and all the things below it, all of that is out in the cloud. And one of the ways in which you can do that, and I do that, is kind of how we're doing it right now. If you use a lot of Google services, and I use Gmail, and I use Google Drive, and we're using a Hangout right now. This is all being run in the cloud, except for what I'm doing on my computer, but I'm sharing it with you via the cloud. So if you have an organization, these are the options that you have, and some organizations will want to, they'll want to have quite a few things, like you look in the hybrid, their platform as a service, they want most of their hardware and most of the operating system and the basic stuff that they build their applications on. All of that is run out and exists out in the cloud, and their data and their applications they keep in-house. And there are some variations to this. It's about as customizable as you can imagine. It sometimes, I believe, you can have an external organization manage your cloud that you keep internally. It depends on what your security issues are. And I have another slide on that. And that is when you're thinking about workload placement. If you have at the very bottom there, we've got mission critical intellectual property and knowledge that you want to keep pretty much close to the vest. So in a situation like that, you want it in a public cloud. You still might have an organization where you've got to have a number of people have access to it. You do want to have it in the cloud so they do have access to it, but you want to make it private, and you want to make it so that it's not going to be compromised. By the same token, if you're up at the top where you're doing test and development, or you're running applications, you can do that out in a public cloud. For instance, you might be doing presentations, you might be sharing documents in Google Drive, where you can collaborate and create things from different parts of the world simultaneously. And if it's not something that you're too terribly worried about, in my experience, it's still pretty private, but it does not have the security of when I worked at Rocketdyne, we were subject to the international traffic and arms regulations, and there was just no way that some things could exist outside of our firewall. In terms of the value and how end users see it, the greatest value for most end users is in software as a service. That's where they're going to interface for the most part. As you go further down the stack into the platform and infrastructure as a service, you get to your application developers and network architects. Most of us will be up at the top end, just utilizing whatever's made available, whether it's in a private cloud or a public cloud. I think this is my final slide on the cloud. The point I want to make here is what I'm saying is, if you are using new technology, but you don't change your thinking about how you trust your employees and what you allow them to do, the result is you're just not going to get anything out of it, and in fact, you might go backwards. The icons on the right are representative of some of the major public areas in which employees could conceivably use the cloud for keeping some of their stuff. I know if I were still working in a large organization as I was, I would have found it very useful to be able to put some files out in the cloud so that I could work with them at home if I felt like it, or if I just sort of had an idea late at night and I wanted to put it in there. It makes it much easier. If you don't allow people to get to these things, if you don't trust them, it's just not going to work. Oh, and this is just a little. I doubt that you can read this very clearly, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the organizations that are out there providing these various services, from infrastructure to software. And you can't see them all, but there's quite a few, and all the way from very, very big ones to very small ones. And you can't see it here, but they're like software as a service is broken up at the top left for business management, the top right vertical applications. There's CRM, customer relationship management on the bottom right, cloud security to the left of that, and then a whole bunch of tools to the left of that. And you may have used some of these. I have. Again, you'll have access to this later on, and I'd be more than happy to send you either individual slides or the whole presentation, which you also should be able to download from SlideShare once I put it up there. So now we get to the concept of working out loud. And this is a definition from John Stepper, who I do not know personally, but who knows quite a few of the people that I've worked with over the years. And I'm going to go into some of the detail of this. You can read it for yourself, but the next few slides I'll talk about what we mean by working out loud and how you can go about doing that. So the first thing about working out loud is literally make your work visible. And that's sort of the basic concept of what we mean by out loud. Not so much that you're yelling or anything, but that the other term that's been used for this is observable work. That instead of sitting in your office or sitting in a cubicle, people and keeping everything on your computer or in a file cabinet or what have you, if you go back to when we used to, everything was on paper. Instead, you work in such a way that people can see what you're doing. And for me, one of the most useful examples of how valuable this can be and how it changes things is going back to my experience again. And I believe this is true in many large organizations. People are required to produce monthly status reports, which means at the end of the month, if you're really organized, you have notes. If you're not so organized, you got to kind of remember. And you put together a report, anywhere from a page to 2 pages, about what you intended to do and what you did and what accomplishments you made. And then you give that to your manager, who receives, say, a dozen of those. And your manager then has to cull through those and pull out the things that he or she thinks is the most important items, and maybe add a few paragraphs themselves. And then that goes up to either another management level or up to the director level, where the same culling process takes place, and then it goes up to the VPs, and ultimately it goes to the president or the CEO, the COO, I'm not sure. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and it also tends to produce a lot of crap at the top because it's being filtered by people who have agendas. One of the ways this has worked, working out loud has helped, is that when people are, say, microblogging their work and having conversations with others in uh, in systems such as Salesforce's Chatter or in Yammer, which a lot of organizations use as a sort of internal microblogging system, similar to Twitter, but a lot more robust, um, or at least more robust than Twitter used to be. Uh, in that way, management can see what you're doing, and your fellow workers can see what you're doing, and you can. Uh, and there's no need for any month-end wrap-up or anything like that. It's now becomes a continuous process. Now, the next slide is fits right along with this, and that is make your work better. And the way you make your work better is by sharing it and by having other people share theirs. And in that way, you get feedback, you get into conversations, you get to know what other people are doing, and it helps you understand better what it is you're doing. And this, again, I have to get back to um, the difference between a very, very small business and a very large business. And a lot of my experience comes from very large businesses, a lot of my later experience, and where I've aimed quite a bit of this. But I do want to point out that I believe this is true even with an individual business. If say you have, if in your case perhaps the way to do that is to have a blog or to have a Facebook page where you share some of what's going on about your business to better inform your customers, not just to bring in new business. So you're not necessarily marketing, you're just sharing what you're doing. You're working out loud and bringing other people that you interface with into the mix with you. Which brings up the next slide, and that's to do what you do with the idea of genuinely helping other people. Not just to market yourself. If you're inside an organization where you have a lot of other people, generally people who share but are doing it because they're just trying to make themselves look better. In my opinion, that most people will see through that, and we'll talk about. I will talk a little bit about some of the concepts that float around that. So the idea here is that whatever you do it with the idea of helping out your fellow employees, your customers, even your suppliers. If you could make it easier on your suppliers to take care of what you need, ultimately everybody wins from that. Also, what you'll be doing when you do this is you'll be building a social network. You sort of take people with whom you have very loose ties and you strengthen those ties. And as you work with people and as you share and as you teach them and learn from them, the level of trust goes up considerably, and you end up building this network that you can turn to get a lot of information from and to help you out when you most need it. Also, one of the things that it's very easy to do, I did this when I first left Rocketdyne, and I was very interested in learning about all the social tools that were available. I kind of got wrapped up in all the different things that I could do, and frankly ended up wasting a fair amount of time. The idea here, what I'm trying to get across here, is that you need to make your work purposeful, that you need to pick a direction and keep yourself somewhat focused on what that is. Don't allow the tools, don't allow the social aspect of it. When we use the word social, we're not really talking about socializing. We're talking about using the connections that people have to improve the way we work and how we get things done. So you asked the question, is technology really helpful? And And a lot of times we've had people say, I've been experienced situations where technology has not helped because it hasn't been used, and I'll get into that just in just a moment. But this is a chart that I stole from Dion Hinchcliffe, who puts together some fascinating things. He once told me the software that he uses for it, but I forget what it is. But I remember I didn't want to spend the money for it. But what he's showing here is that the key engagement factors are the things that studies have shown keep people working and make them makes their situation such that they work thoughtfully, and that they care about their jobs, and they stay engaged with what they're doing and with the people they're doing it with. And you'll see that the ones that have red dots are the ones where the studies show technology can definitely help out. And I won't go through them, but you can see that it's the majority of them. Clearly, remuneration and interesting work and career growth have nothing to do really with the technology. They have to do with how the business operates. But everything else, tools can do that. On the other hand, is technology sufficient? And the answer is no, it's not. And I use this picture of Icarus, who, if you recall the story, his hubris caused him to fly up too close to the sun when he had made these wings that were held together by wax. The wax melted and he fell to the earth. He had all these wonderful intentions, but all the good intentions in the world do not necessarily translate into people doing things the right way. And that could be a recipe for disaster. And what that requires is, you'll see at the very bottom of this pyramid on the left, without a supportive organizational structure, having the right tools and having actively engaged knowledge workers, while quite useful, I don't believe is really going to translate into getting the kind of organizational effectiveness that you would like. So if you're a small company, you still have to, you got to be there. You've got to help your people out. Maybe you just deal with your clients or your customers. You got to, you have to sort of take the bull by the horns and show them how to make these things work to improve the business. Listening to them as well. The thing on the depiction on the right is I'm not going to go into that in detail. Again, it will be available to you. That comes from a gentleman by the name of Harold Yarsch. I am not certain if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's spelled Jarche. He writes quite a bit about working out loud, and I'd like to think I can consider him a friend as well. Otherwise, maybe he'll sue me for taking this. He has a blog on. He talks. I can't remember the term right now. At any rate, as I said, this will be available to you. The WOL is working out loud, and these are the different ways in which people organizing themselves can do this. So I meant this to be a depiction of all of the qualities that are required for social to work to support the concept of working out loud. And they go from trust. When people trust you, they will work more closely with you. You can collaborate with people better when there's trust. Obviously, you need communication, mutual support. Two very important items that are on here, I think, are authenticity and transparency. I was kind of hinting at that earlier. When you work with people at a distance and they don't know you personally, if you over time make it clear that you are not hiding anything from them. You don't work with a hidden agenda, and that you don't offer yourself as someone who knows something that you don't really know, which are the elements of transparency and authenticity. They will trust you. They will collaborate with you. They will communicate with you, and it will help to build that community that you need in order to be able to work out loud properly and to make social work properly. So the final at the bottom right here, you see privacy when warranted. I am not suggesting that you necessarily throw everything out there. I don't think anybody wants to do that. So I think it's important to keep that element in mind. When it's necessary to be private, all of these things are unnecessary, and one shouldn't think that we're ever talking about opening everything up. Maybe 100,000 years from now that'll be possible, but it won't. It's not happening now. One other thing I wanted to point out is, and I talked about it earlier, and I just want to come back to it a little bit, that marketing is really transforming. When I started doing marketing, I learned an interesting term that I thought was pretty descriptive of the way most advertising and marketing was done. And the term was spray and pray. That you just sprayed your message out there, and you prayed to God that somebody paid attention to it. What's really happening now is that social is giving us the ability to engage in useful conversations with up and down the value stream, from our suppliers to our customers, and it can go back and forth in whatever way is necessary to as I put here, grease the skids of cooperation and mutual benefit. And it's no longer really about persuasion. People don't want to be persuaded. They don't want you interrupting what they're interested in. They want you to be what they're interested in. So you really have to get to know the people that you're marketing to, and you need to know how to best fulfill the needs that they express to you. So it's a matter of advertising versus, or I should be backwards actually, influencing versus advertising, and contributing versus intruding. And attending to all of this are emergent relationships and organizational principles. Things are changing, and they're changing pretty rapidly. And that was what I meant by the paradigm shift. I do think that we're in the midst of a major commercial and possibly industrial revolution. And in fact, my next slide, I know you can't read this very well. This was put together by a man by the name of Jeremiah Ouyang, and he is one of the people leading what's called the collaborative economy. And this is a new and growing sector, shall we say, of the overall economy. You'll see it revolves around here. We've got money, goods, food, services, transportation, and space. And by space, we're talking about living space and working space. So there are all these sharing organizations where you can go rent a desk for an hour, a day, a week, whatever you might need it for. There are places you can go and you can stay in people's homes. Airbnb is probably the most well-known of them. If you look down at the bottom left there under transportation, you perhaps have heard of the battles that are going now between Uber, which is a ride sharing and ride providing organization that is fighting with more traditional taxi companies that are very upset because they have to be licensed and the Uber people aren't. And it runs the gamut here. And I hope that you'll look a little more closely at this by downloading my slides or what have you. It's really a fascinating development, and it it's already, I believe, a multi-billion-dollar sector. So I expect that this is just going to get bigger and bigger. There's organizations that help people share tools. There's just so much here, and this is all emergent. This is all changing as we speak, practically. So it's kind of tough to keep an eye on some of this stuff. Finally, I'll leave you with this. You may have seen this before. The chief financial officer asks the CEO, and maybe somebody works with you, asks you, what if we invest all this money in developing our people and then they leave us? Why would we want to do that? Because they might leave us. And the CEO thinks about it for a moment, and her answer is, well, what happens if we don't and they stay? And I'll leave you with this thought here, because it goes back to what I said about about bringing in technology but not changing the way you look at things. You need to change. If you have people that work with you, for you, they need to change. You need to be thinking about how you're doing things and how you can make them better and how you can respond to the needs of the market and the needs of the people that you interact with. And if you have any questions, if you send them in a chat, I believe Mackenzie will see what they are. We've got 10 minutes left. I believe that's all I have, other than these references here. I've probably left something out. Some of them are within the body. I've tried to give credit to everyone who has helped me over the years. And that's it. I don't know if, Mackenzie, if you can hear me, and I assume you can, otherwise you would have come barging into the room here and let me know that things weren't working. No questions? All right, I am going to unshare this real quickly and see if who have we here? Matthew. Hello, Matthew. Yes, I see Maria asked a question. That's been answered. Yeah, I think I have everybody's email address. As I said, this is recorded. It will be on my YouTube channel. My name is Rick Ladd, and that's how you can find me just about anywhere. I'm not the I'm not the politician from New Hampshire, and I'm not the guy that does bottle cap artwork, but I usually seem to predominate the Google search results. And also, I will put this up on SlideShare, which will connect it to my LinkedIn profile. It will be available. I'll make sure you get it if you can't find it any other way, believe me. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate this. I would love to hear from you, some feedback. If there's anything I missed, or if I went too fast, or I confused you, please let me know, and I will probably cover some of these subjects in greater detail later on. You're welcome, Barbara. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to, I guess I'm going to end this now. See you later. Bye.